Good afternoon, everyone. What we're going to do is we've got a few more people that are expecting to come on the webinar, so we'll give another couple of minutes and then we'll get started. We are using a new version of GoToWebinar today, so if you can just double check that your mics are all muted, that will be lovely. Thank you very much. So we'll give it another couple of minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, so I think we've got most of the people in, so I think we're just going to get started. So welcome and thank you very much for joining our Q1 release webinar for Compucare 8. So my name's Imogen Dawson and I've also got Candy Burton here with me today, so we'll be running the webinar. So hopefully, obviously, the aim of today's webinar is just to show you some of the new enhancements that have come through for versions 8.11, 8.12, 8.13 and 8.14. So some of these we've covered quite quickly, but others we've gone into a little bit further in depth. So obviously, if you have any questions as we're going through, if you put them into the question box, we'll try and answer them on the way. If there's any that we don't have time to answer, we'll send you a message after the webinar. What we'll also do is we'll stick around for a few minutes after the webinar as well if there's any other questions that come in. So essentially what will be happening moving forward is our development cycles have slightly changed. So some of you may be aware of this already, but essentially what this means is that builds of Compucare will be coming a lot quicker than they have done in the past. So yes, they will be a little bit smaller, but they will be coming more often. So essentially that means that if you are waiting for a particular enhancement, you should be able to get this sooner. So roughly we are having a new build every 6 weeks. So what we wanted to do is instead of doing a webinar every new build, we're going to do them per quarter. So obviously we're doing Q1 today, and then we will then do Q2, Q3 and Q4, which will hopefully cover a range of the builds and obviously lots of new enhancements that we've got coming in as well. Yeah, so I think that's everything from me for now. So obviously, again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the question box and hopefully we can get those answered. But yeah, so I think what we'll do is we'll just get started. Let's get started with 8.11 and e-referral. For those of our customers who use ERS, Compucare can now include the named clinician against the e-referral slots. To do this, users will need to access the availability, which is set to be published for e-referral. As can be seen on screen, by switching the toggle for named clinician to be set to on, the clinicians can be recorded against the availability record. This will automatically default in the clinician's name, which the given availability is for. However, this can be changed by selecting a cross on the field and entering the new name. We have also made a change to the ERS service code table. Services can now have a treatment function recorded against them, which will be automatically added into any bookings made against that service. Let's take a look at Inpatient Bookings. A new toggle has been added named Use Real Time within the Inpatient Bookings. When admitting a booking, the option is available to either use the planned admission date/time or to use the current date/time, real time. When this toggle has been changed, Compucare will remember the option chosen and automatically select this for you when admitting the next patient. Functionality now exists to create planned beds for scheduling inpatient bookings bed plans. This means patients can now be booked into a planned bed which links to an actual bed upon admitting the patient. I'll now pass you over to Candy to explain further.
Thanks, Imogen. So let's take a look at planning beds. Planning beds can be used for the following scenario. A surgeon has availability between the hours of 9 and 12, and within this time frame, they have 6 patients booked in, with each procedure taking about 30 minutes. The start time for the 6 surgeries has not yet been confirmed, and this will not be decided until the morning of the surgery, which means that all patients will be asked to arrive at 8:30 a.m. Prior to attending, the patients will be admitted to a day case ward. However, as this ward only includes 2 beds, each patient will be asked to sit in a waiting area until 30 minutes prior to their surgical booking time, at which point they'll be admitted to their day case bed. Whilst the patient bed booking times will never overlap, it may be necessary to schedule this in advance to ensure that there's a record of which bed the patient will be admitted to. As Compucare will not allow multiple patients to be booked into one bed, the idea of planning beds has been created. Okay, so let's now take a look then at how to set up planning beds within your Compucare system. So I'm within my beds code table, and I'm just going to search for day case beds. And within here, you can see I do have a few beds which are already set up within my code table. So firstly, I've got 2 beds here, which are my actual beds. These are the ones that I'm going to admit patients into. I then have 3 other beds, which are labelled as planning beds. So I have planning bed A, B and C for bed 1, and I've got planning bed A, B and C for bed 2. If I edit one of these beds, you can see I now have a toggle available to me which says is planning bed. Within this bed here, as soon as I set this to yes, I then lose the ability to enter in any locations or bed types or anything like that, and I simply have a field available for actual bed. What this allows me to do is to link my planning bed into my actual bed, which means when I admit my patient, the patient is going to be linked through to my actual bed here. Okay, so if I save out of my planning bed now then, and I'm going to go into an inpatient booking, which I have today. So this patient is due to be admitted to the hospital today. If I edit my patient record, you can see within my bed plan, I've got them set up as a bed plan for linking to a planning bed. So if I edit my planning bed record here, you can see within this screen, I've got not just my actual beds available, but I also have my planning beds available to me as well. By choosing a planning bed within this screen, and by saving this and clicking finish, as soon as I try to admit my patient, rather than pulling through a planning bed, it will automatically bring through for me the bed which that planning bed is associated with. So my planning bed A is associated with day case bed 1, which is why that's now pulled it through automatically for me into this screen. This should mean that you can schedule your inpatient and day case bookings through to beds which are planning beds, which will not take into account any clash management, and they can then link through to actual beds when you're ready to admit the patient into the system. Let's pass you back to Imogen now, and she's going to take a look at the next enhancement.
Let's take a look at some enhancements to system administration. A new field named Maximum Open Patients has been added within system settings. This now makes it possible to define how many patients a single user may have open at any given time. In version 8.11, we have renamed dual coding to instead be named clinical coding. There has been no change to the functionality of this feature. A fin completeness file will now be generated as a part of the fin submission file exports. This file includes a breakdown of how many records have been exported. Let's take a look at the prescribed items. When creating a prescription, the dispensing date can now be added, which is over 7 days in the future. This, however, is reliant on the user confirming this action upon save. This can now be seen on screen. Let's take a look at the enhancements for Provider Ledger. For those of our clients who use the credit card functionality to take your patient payments in Compucare, we now have expanded this to be included within the Provider Ledger. This means providers can now pay their invoices either from a saved payment card or directly via your PEB machines. As a part of this change, card payment methods now include the ability to add receipt and refund layouts for provider transactions. Now moving on to purchase ordering. In version 8.11, we've included the option to be able to return a purchase order which may have previously been receipted or invoiced. This can now be seen on screen. Let's take a look at surgical bookings. It's now possible for both outpatient and surgical bookings lists to be printed via the Scheduler app. This can be performed by filtering your schedule to the needed information and then selecting the print option along the top. We've now improved the next free searching functionality by allowing users to search for appointment slots which specifically do not include any prioritisation. Previously, it was only possible to filter your booking search down to those which had specific prioritisations or to show both prioritised and not. Moving on to 8.12, let's look at the enhancements for the contracts. Imported EDI remittances will now be created as unposted batches to allow for amendments to be made prior to posting. Let's take a look at inpatient bookings. News scores within the inpatient bed board have now been updated to the new version named News 2. The details of News 2 can now be seen on screen. Along with the update to News 2 fields, a change has also been made to the warning bands in regards to the colours used. This is to support those users who may have visual impairments. Let's take a look at system administration. For those of our clients who use filtered tiles pinned to their home, patient or person areas, we have now redesigned these to clearly show how many records the filter is currently showing. Examples of these changes can be seen on screen. Now take a look at outpatient bookings. Originating bookings have now been simplified to exist within the Link Inpatient Booking tab of the Billing Episode selection screen. In order to link to an existing billing episode, click on the Billing Episode selection button within your booking. If another billing episode can be found, this can be selected by clicking on the Link to Existing tab or by clicking the Link to Inpatient Booking tab. Selecting one of the link options will mean that any charges will be added to the selected billing episode. Now moving on to purchase ordering. From version 8.12 onwards, we have made changes to when purchase orders can be cancelled. Previous to this version, a purchase order could only be cancelled if none of the lines had been received. I'll now pass you over to Candy to explain further.
Thanks, Imogen. So here we have a purchase order which has been created for today, and you can see on here it's currently fully outstanding here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do a part receipt for this quickly, and I'm just going to remove just one of the lines off it, and let's say that they couldn't deliver this one for whatever reason. Now I'm going to save and finalise my receipt. So my purchase order now has been part receipted within the system here, so it's still got the option to be fully receipted. Now, I'm going to say at this point, actually, unfortunately, our supplier couldn't ever deliver those goods, so they couldn't ever deliver this aspirin here. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to cancel it. So now when I go up to the top and select the option for cancel, we can choose that, and then it will label it as being fully receipted. But if you take a look, you can see that the aspirin was never delivered, and that was just an outstanding line on the purchase order there. So that's just a way that you can cancel your purchase orders without having to actually fully receipt them in if they could never bring the goods to you. I'll pass you back to Imogen now.
Let's take a look at surgical bookings. We have now added the ability to swap pre-book theatre to another theatre's availability. I'll pass you across to Candy, who will explain this further.
Thanks, Imogen. As we can see on screen, within the scheduler, we have two availabilities which have been created. So we have Dr. John Anderson, and we also have Dr. Meredith Gray. So taking a look at this screen now, the two surgeons will be needing to swap their availability. So Dr. John Anderson, instead of working in Theatre 3, will be working in Theatre 2, and vice versa for Dr. Meredith Gray. And so we're simply going to take our availability for Dr. John Anderson, and we're going to select it within the Theatre 3, and just simply drag that on top of Theatre 2's availability. Compucare will then prompt us to confirm if this is what we wish to do. If we're happy with it, we can click on swap. And as you can see now, when the screen refreshes, those two availabilities have now switched round. I'll pass you back to Imogen now, and she's going to take a look at some more enhancements.
Looking at the enhancements for Chargemaster and Stock Management, a new column has been made available within the Stock Transactions app named Patient. This will show which patient a transaction is for and could be related to either a prescribed item or a stock item charge added to their booking. Now looking at 8.13, Chargemaster and Stock Management. As of the 9th of February, the Falsified Medicines Directive came into effect. Compucare has implemented a number of changes which can help with this, including a new app named Medicine Verifications, which can be used for recording verifies, dispensers, destroying and adding samples. As well as being able to manually add verifications, users will also be prompted to perform verifications upon finalisation of the purchase order receipts. This verification can be performed by scanning the barcodes or the QR codes of the items due to be received. For details of how to use FMD, we have a playlist on our YouTube channel which contains videos on how to set up and how to use Compucare for your FMD medicine verifications. Now take a look at outpatient bookings. When cancelling an inpatient booking which has been linked to an outpatient appointment, the outpatient will now be cancelled along with the same cancellation reason as the inpatient booking. This function will only take into effect if the outpatient booking is still at a book state. Take a look on screen for how this is performed. Let's take a look at system administration. Functionality to zoom in and out of both letter and report previews has now been added. This should make it much easier to view the exact details before you get to the stage of printing. From version 8.13, we've included tagging functionality in the following areas: outpatient bookings, inpatient bookings, orders, episode of care, patient transactions and billing. For more information on the setup, I'll pass you across to Candy.
So let's take a look at tagging now. So within this screen, I have an outpatient booking. As Imogen mentioned to you, I can use tagging in multiple different areas of the system, but outpatient bookings is just what I'm going to show you in today. So within this screen, if I scroll down, I've got a new field available for me named tags. Tags can be used in a few different ways, but for what I'm going to use it for, I'm going to use it to just filter down my appointments so I know which appointments are maybe routine, and I'm also going to use my treatment function and note this in here as well. So I'm literally typing in here the word routine, and I'm also typing in ophthalmology because that's the treatment function that I'm using. So I do also have available for me a drop-down menu, and within the drop-down I can see any tags which have been used before. So those are easy just to select them from there too. If I'm happy just for these two tags to be added on, so my routine and ophthalmology tags, I'm just going to save my screen here and then go to finish. And that's my tag added to my booking. So how can we use these tags? If I go into the outpatient booking screen, and when I'm within this screen, I can see I've got quite a lot of information that's already filled in for me. So I might want to filter this down. So I'm only viewing those patients which are either routine and possibly even just the ophthalmology patients. To do this, I can use my search along the top here. And there's two tagging options available to me. I can either choose tag match all or tags match any. Currently, I'm just going to select match any. And I'm just going to type in here routine and hit enter, just the same as I would have done on my booking. This then filters the screen down to only show me those patients which have the tag of routine added against them. I'm also going to tag for ophthalmology and enter that in as well. Now, because I'm matching any right now, this would also find me any patients who may have had the ophthalmology tag on there. You can see actually my list of patients has stayed the same. If I now go into the tag search though, and if I change this to say match all, this is only going to find me those patients which have both routine and ophthalmology tags against them. So it's really easy to be able to filter down the screens for anything that you would see as useful within the screen here. I'll pass it back to Imogen now, and she's going to explain a few more things.
And we'll finish off with 8.14. Let's take a look at inpatient bookings. We've now added the ability to record the resident medical officer in Compucare. This can be set up against the clinician record and then can be recorded against the location code table or within the bedboard app. Further changes to the patient bedboard include the ability to now order the patient information shown on the left panel. This should make the process of moving a patient into an available bed much easier process. When clinically coding a diagnosis for a patient, this is now stored at booking level rather than on the episode of care. This previously may have caused an issue in situations where one or more visits are required. For instance, if a patient presents with a repetitive strain injury and a carpal tunnel release is performed but does not fix the symptoms, the diagnosis for the second procedure is not the same, as the effects of the carpal tunnel release are now part of the diagnosis. Looking at the enhancements for Chargemaster and Stock Management, when adding duplicate charges within the Charges app, users will now be prompted to ask if they would prefer to either update the quantity of the item being duplicated, to amend the charge item you are adding, or to cancel adding the charge without proceeding. Take a look on screen to see these options. Let's look at the enhancements for the contracts. The markup, discount and special prices rules can now exclude anything defined within the contract as being an uninsured item. To do this, simply click on the toggle within the contract rule named Exclude Uninsured Items. This will mean that any items associated as an uninsured item will not be taken into account for this rule you're creating. Group invoice generation can now be either grouped by the purchaser or by the purchaser and contract. This is defined within the purchaser group code table. Let's take a look at system administration. In version 8.14, we've now added 10 new available fields within the Letter Designer to help you pull out all the necessary data for your patients. All of these entries can now be seen on screen. Moving on to Outpatient Bookings. We've now changed the way in which follow-up or new outpatient bookings are recorded. As you can see on the screen, in versions previous to 8.14, this would have been a toggle which would have been switched between new or follow-up. However, to make this field available as mandatory, we have now created a drop-down menu. This ensures that users select the relevant information before saving the booking. In a scenario where a clinician can no longer run the clinic which they are associated with, but the clinic must still take place, availability can now easily be reassigned to a new clinician, ensuring that the room and the patients are automatically pulled across. I'll now pass you over to Candy, who will explain this in more detail.
So within our scheduler screen here, you can see that we've got Dr. James Burton, which has multiple patients booked in today. Dr. Burton is taking his appointments in consulting room 2, which you can see the availability for as well. But Dr. Burton has now unfortunately had to cancel this. So the patients are now going to be taken over by Mrs. Dover here. So you can see that there's no availability currently set up for Mrs. Dover. So what we're going to do is create some. So we're going to go into Mrs. Dover's account, and we're going to create some new outpatient availability. So I'm going to choose my site as usual, and then I'm going to pick my room. So the room that I'm going to choose is consulting room 2, which is the same room as Dr. Burton had. I'm then going to choose the date for when I want this to take place. So it could be multiple dates, but for me in this scenario, it's purely going to be the 4th of April that we're going to choose. So the times that we're going to be in for are from 10 o'clock until 6 o'clock. And you can see within the bottom section now, we've got our availability, which is created, associating it with the consulting room 2. If I choose save on here, I now get a problem message, which is showing along the top here, which is availability has problems. And you can also see down on the status here, I've got a room booking clash, which tells me the pre-booked room by James Burton. But whereas previously I would have had to just click save or click cancel on this, we now have a new option available for replace clashing availability and save. If I choose this option for us and then click finish, once I've done this, I can see my availability in the screen. If I go back to the scheduler screen now, and if we just refresh this screen, you can now see that all of my availability, which I did have under Dr. James Burton, has now moved over, and it's now all associated with Mrs. Dover instead. This includes the room availability and all of my patients that were previously booked in. So that should make it an easier process for if there's any changes like this to be able to move everything over from one clinician over to your new clinician who's going to be taking it over.
So that concludes our Compucare 8 Q1 release webinar for today. Following on from this, we'll be doing a release webinar each quarter, and we'll be regularly uploading more how-to videos to our YouTube channel, so make sure to subscribe there. If you have any questions, please contact me on imogen.dawson@streets-heaver.com or contact our support team at their usual forums. Thanks again for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.